Happy Jackie Robinson Day. Today we're going to take a look at some of the more notable Blackball no-hitters. Now, I grew up a New York Mets fan in the 1970s. I'm the awestruck one on the right. That's my brother Mike on the left. Being a Mets fan in the 1970s, I grew up with a deep love and appreciation of great pitching. That includes appreciating no-hitters, even if a long line of amazing Mets all-stars never could manage to throw one. It was the Mets' long no-hit futility that inspired an author and Mets fan named Dirk Lammers to create the website no-hitters.com. For 4 years, the site counted the progress of the Mets' no-hit drought, which reached 8,019 games before Johan Santana finally accomplished the feat in 2012. Since then, no-hitters.com has evolved into the authoritative source on all things related to no-hitters, including publishing a list of segregated blackball no-hitters. Now, definitive anything is impossible in Negro League research, and Lammers freely admits this list is a work in progress. There are, in fact, a few discrepancies between his list and the collection of blackball no-hitters at retrosheet.com. But with contributions of some of the giants of blackball research, the list at no-hitters is the most comprehensive I've ever seen, and it served as the primary roadmap for this presentation. There are 102 no-hitters on Lammers' list, divided into 4 categories. Professional level Negro League no-hitters are those thrown against top-level competition. Minor league and semi-pro Negro League no-hitters thrown against lesser competition. For each category, there's a subset of games that lasted fewer than 9 innings and are technically not official no-hitters. Today, we're going to take a close look at 28 no-hitters from the top 2 categories, professional level no-hitters thrown against top-level competition. But first, let's mention some no-hitters thrown in the early days of pro blackball, when the opposition was almost exclusively minor league and semi-pro. Shep Trusty was the ace hurler for the Cuban Giants, the first Black professional baseball team, and early in the Cube's 3rd season, 1887, Trusty became the first Black professional to throw a no-hitter when he stymied a semi-pro team augmented by a few members of the American Association's Philadelphia Athletics. In Trenton, New Jersey, the Cuban Giants trounced the Trenton Club 16-0. Come on in here. Big George Wilson was one of the last Black players in what we call organized baseball when he starred for the Adrian Demons in the Michigan State League. A year later, he was pitching for the all-Black Page Fence Giants, for whom he threw the second documented Black no-hitter in Defiance, Ohio. 6 years later, Wilson made history when he became the first Black with 2 no-hitters to his credit, and he didn't stop there, adding a third in 1903. But George Wilson's record didn't last long, compliments of the great Andrew Rube Foster. Foster threw 2 no-hitters in a 2-week period in 1902, pitching in Texas with the Fort Worth Colts. After he moved east, he added a pair in 1904 and 5 while pitching for the Philadelphia Giants. Foster threw a 5th in 1907 with the Chicago Leland Giants and added a 6th in 1908 while freelancing with the St. Paul Colored Gophers. And 6, of course, is just the no-hitters we know about. There's no telling if there were others lost to history. Lastly, a nod to Danny McClellan, one-time teammate and later rival of Rube Foster. On July 7, 1903, in York, Pennsylvania, Danny McClellan became the first Black professional to throw a perfect game when he turned the trick in the Cuban ex-Giants' 5-0 win over the Penn Park Baseball Club of the Tri-State League. Top-level Black versus Black competition became much more common in the 1910s, and going forward, we'll be looking exclusively at major league quality no-hitters. The first big league level blackball no-hitter was thrown by one of the greatest hurlers of the dead ball era, Cannonball Dick Redding. In August 1912, pitching for the New York Lincoln Giants, Redding no-hit the Cuban Stars in Atlantic City, New Jersey. The headline says Redding pitches his second no-hit game. The first happened a few weeks earlier against a semi-pro team called the Cherokee Indians. 2 years later, the Red Ant, Frank Wickware, nearly pitched Big League Blackball's first perfect game. Pitching for the Chicago American Giants against their bitter rivals, the Indianapolis ABCs, Wickware walked leadoff hitter George Shively, who was promptly thrown out attempting to steal second. Then Wickware retired the next 26 consecutive batters to complete his imperfect game. Wickware's gem was thrown at the longtime home of the Chicago American Giants, Shoreling Park. There are 40 big league level black no-hitters on the no-hitters list, and 10 of them, 25%, occurred at Shoreling Park. As you might expect, this was a notorious pitcher's park. Originally called Southside Park, it was the first home of the Chicago White Sox, whose 1906 world champions were known as the Hitless Wonders. Park factors for the Sox time here reveal a ballpark that reduced run scoring by better than 10%, hits by nearly as much, and home runs by about 75%. In the 9.5 seasons the white major leagues played here, 4 no-hitters were thrown, followed by 10 in 22 Negro League seasons. Less than a year after Wickware's performance, the Chicago-Indianapolis rivalry produced another no-hitter when ABC's ace Dizzy Dismukes silenced Rube Foster's lineup in Indianapolis. According to the Indianapolis News, 18-year-old Oscar Charleston, quote, collected his usual long hit, a home run drive to deep center. Here's a game I want to know more about. On the first Sunday in May 1919, a huge crowd gathered at Olympic Field in Harlem to see a doubleheader between the two New York Blackball Giants, the Lincoln Giants and Brooklyn Royal Giants. Game 1 was the feature matchup, a showdown between Hall of Famer Smokey Joe Williams and should-be Hall of Famer Cannonball Dick Redding, former teammates turned bitter rivals. Williams no-hit the Royal Giants, but his Lincolns were unable to score off Redding until the 9th inning. The only details we have about the bottom of the 9th is that with 1 out, Lincoln's first baseman Bill Pettis scored the winning run. I'd love to know the specifics of that 9th inning and Smokey Joe Williams' walk-off no-hitter nail-biter over Cannonball Dick Redding. Big Bill Gatewood was a 6-foot right-hander out of San Antonio, Texas, who was a master of the spitball, the emery ball, and every other doctoring kind of ball. In 1916, pitching for the St. Louis Giants, Gatewood no-hit the Cuban Stars at the Christian Brother College Diamond in St. Louis. Gatewood walked 3 and struck out 6. 2 Giants errors allowed the Cubans an unearned run in the 6th. Gatewood threw another no-hitter 5 years later in 1921, becoming the first to achieve multiples in top-level competition. Gatewood was pitching for the Detroit Stars. The opponent was once again the Cuban Stars, and this was the first no-hitter thrown in the new Negro National League. In an Ohtani-like performance, Gatewood pitched 9 hitless innings, walking 2 and striking out 10, while going 2 for 3 with a homer and 3 RBIs. 3 months later, Gatewood's Detroit Stars fell victim to another spitball artist, Phil Cockrell of Hilldale. This was 2 years before the founding of the Eastern Colored League. Hilldale was the strongest independent team in the East, and Cockrell was their best pitcher. A year later, Cockrell joined Gatewood in the multi-no-hit club when he shut down the American Giants at every pitcher's best friend, Shoreling Park. The Chicago Tribune clipping here claims Cockrell was 19 years old. The veteran right-hander was actually 27 and entering his prime. Just a few weeks earlier, Jesse Nip Winters of the Backrack Giants no-hit the Indianapolis ABCs in Kokomo, Indiana. The following season, Winters joined Phil Cockrell on the Hilldale pitching staff, and together they led the Philadelphia-based club to the first 3 Eastern Colored League pennants. Winters threw his second no-hitter, and the Eastern Colored League's first, in September 1924 against a fearsome Harrisburg Giants lineup that included Oscar Charleston, Rap Dixon, Fats Jenkins, and Edgar Wesley. Or did he? The Philadelphia Inquirer headline reads, "Hilldale Twirler hurls no-hit game. Nip Winters blanks Harrisburg Giants without signs of bingo as teams split." But the same day's Harrisburg Telegraph tells us Hilldale wins in first game, Winters near no-hit record, second battle goes to local Giants. It came nearly being a no-hit game, but a hard-hit grounder to Stevens by Jenkins in the 6th, which was too hard to handle, was scored as a hit. Many fans thought it should have been credited as an error. The official scorer saw it according to rules, and with 2 other sports writers agreeing, chalked it up as a hit. So did Nip Winters no-hit Harrisburg or not? Baseball Reference's BR bullpen entry on Winters writes, "He threw a no-hitter against the Harrisburg Giants, and only an error by Jake Stevens cost him a perfect game." And the list at no-hitters.com includes this game. But I like the way Retro Sheet handled it. The box score of this game is included in their list of no-hitters, but that box score has Winters allowing a single to Fats Jenkins. There are some pieces of Negro League history that are just destined to remain mysterious no matter how much digging we do. One of the most interesting figures to throw a no-hitter was Franklin Doc Sykes, who hurled his gem in 1922 for the Baltimore Black Sox. The Decatur, Alabama native was a pretty good pitcher for several Eastern teams in the late teens and early 20s, but his greatest contributions came off the diamond. The name Doc wasn't just a nickname because Doc Sykes was studying dentistry throughout his playing career and left the game when he received his degree. Sykes returned to his hometown of Decatur and established a practice. In 1931, 5 years after he threw his last pitch, Sykes played a role in one of the most infamous trials in American history. The Scottsboro Boys, as they were called, were 9 young Black men, ages 12 to 20, falsely accused of rape by 2 white women. Despite a complete lack of evidence, an all-white male jury quickly convicted them in sham trials conducted in a mob atmosphere. 8 of the 9 were sentenced to death. During a lengthy series of appeals, Dr. Franklin Sykes testified that qualified Black jurors like himself were unfairly overlooked in the selection process. Ultimately, the United States Supreme Court overturned the guilty verdicts and ordered a new trial. After his testimony, Sykes endured death threats, had a cross burned on his front yard. After several years of such incidents, including being chased by a car full of Ku Klux Klansmen, Sykes left Alabama and returned to Baltimore, scene of his greatest baseball triumph, where he reestablished his dental practice and lived to the ripe old age of 94. Here's a remarkable game, a combined no-hitter shared by a pair of Hall of Famers. In a Negro National League game in Kansas City, the hometown Monarchs topped the Milwaukee Bears 7-0. The Monarchs' 38-year-old manager, Cuban legend Jose Mendez, started the game and threw 5 perfect innings. Bullet Joe Rogan took over in the 6th and completed the no-no. The only blemish preventing a perfect game was a 6th-inning walk delivered to Milwaukee catcher and number 8 hitter Brown, about whom we know absolutely nothing. Brown, according to Seamheads, was making his only Negro League appearance in this game. Think about that. In his only game in the big leagues, Mr. Unknown Brown prevented 2 Hall of Famers from throwing a combined perfect game. At Maryland Baseball Park in Baltimore on October 3rd, 1926, 30 years before Don Larson's historic performance, Claude "Red" Greer threw a no-hitter in the third game of the World Series between his Backrack Giants of Atlantic City and the Chicago American Giants. Greer, a 22-year-old flamethrower, was a surprise starter, having allowed 7 earned in an inning and 2/3 as starter the previous day. But on this afternoon, he was unhittable while walking 6 and striking out 8. The Backracks wound up losing a thrilling World Series to Chicago. Greer would suffer a dead arm the next season and be finished in baseball by age 24. But his crowning achievement deserves lasting recognition. Baltimore's Maryland Baseball Park was the scene of more history the following season. In mid-May, Black Sox ace Layman Yoakley, the boyhood hero of Leon Day, won both games of the doubleheader with the Cuban Stars. He entered the opener in the 4th inning with the game tied at 6 and held on for a 9-8 victory. Then Yoakley made history in the nightcap, holding the Cubans hitless while walking 2 and striking out 1. 2.5 months later, a second Black Sox hurler threw a no-hitter at Maryland Baseball Park. It took Joe Strong 11 innings to make history against Hilldale. The visitors tagged Strong for an unearned run in the 3rd. Judd Wilson tied things with a homer in the bottom of the 8th. Strong kept Hilldale silent through extra innings, and Black Sox center fielder Pete Washington walked off the no-hitter with a home run in the bottom of the 11th. This marks the longest no-hitter in Blackball history and the first time a team threw 2 big league no-hitters in the same season. In the 5th game of the 1927 World Series, the Backracks' Luther Farrell duplicated Claude Greer's achievement of a year earlier by no-hitting the Chicago American Giants. Technically, this isn't an official no-hitter, as the game was called after 7 innings because of darkness. Farrell walked 5, struck out 3, and allowed 2 unearned runs in a 3-2 Atlantic City win. However, just like the previous season, Chicago would prevail in the series. And let's give a shout out to Wee Willie Jones, the Backracks' 24-year-old catcher, who was behind the plate for both Red Greer and Luther Farrell's gems, making him the only man to catch 2 World Series no-hitters. In 1929, the Kansas City Monarchs once again threw a combined no-hitter against the American Giants, the last one thrown at Shoreland Park. 6'3", 250-pound left-hander Alfred "Army" Cooper held Chicago hitless for 7, but was pulled with 1 out in the 8th after walking the bases loaded. The great Chet Baker, having an historic season, came in to put out the fire and complete the no-hitter. In interviews in later years, Satchel Paige estimated he threw about 55 no-hitters in his career. An exaggeration, of course, but there's little doubt Paige threw several against lesser semi-pro competition. The first big league no-hitter of Satch's career came in 1932. Paige was one of the many stars in Gus Greenlee's Pittsburgh Crawford Galaxy and threw the first no-hitter at Greeley Field against the New York Black Giants. Satchel struck out 11 and walked 3. 4th of July, 1934 was one of the biggest moments of Satchel's legendary career. A huge holiday crowd overflowed Greenlee Field to see a rare matchup between Pittsburgh's 2 great black ball clubs, the long-established Homestead Grays and the upstart Pittsburgh Crawfords. And Paige rose to the occasion with a 17-strikeout no-hitter. He walked just 1 man, Buck Leonard, in the 1st inning. According to the Pittsburgh Courier, Paige conquered the Grays with overpowering speed, only using his curveball that day as a waste pitch. The barnstorming nature of Depression-era blackball can be seen in the location of our next no-hitter, Delano Hitch Recreation Park in Newburgh, New York, a small Hudson River city about 60 miles north of Manhattan. That's where 31-year-old southpaw John Neck Stanley of the New York Cubans shut down the Newark Eagles in a 12-1 laugher. Newark scored their run in the fourth on 2 walks and an error. Hall of Famer Hilton Smith, staff ace of the mighty Kansas City Monarchs, threw the Negro American League's first no-hitter May of 1937 when he mowed down the American Giants in the first game of a doubleheader at Kansas City's Muehlebach Field. Smith faced the minimum 27 batters, as the one batter he walked was erased on a double play. 1937 was the year Dominican dictator Rafael Trujillo lured Satchel Paige, Josh Gibson, Cool Papa Bell, and other Blackball stars to play for Los Dragones de Ciudad Trujillo, a team of ringers he assembled to dominate the Dominican League and divert the attention of his repressed subjects. The Negro League players involved were suspended by the Negro National League, so on their return to the States, they barnstormed as the Dominican All-Stars for the remainder of the season. Satchel Paige was the main attraction when the Dominicans met a league all-star team at New York's Polo Grounds in mid-September. But the great Satch was upstaged by a 21-year-old sensation known as Schoolboy Johnny Taylor. Taylor, who debuted with the New York Cubans as a teenager, walked 5 and struck out 5 while holding his vaunted opponents hitless. As we get into the 1940s, newspaper coverage of black baseball declines dramatically and details can be harder to come by. Johnny Wright of the Indianapolis Crawfords lost a no-hitter to the St. Louis Stars 1-0 in 1940. Unfortunately, there are no other details available. But we do know more about Johnny Wright. In January 1946, 3 months after signing Jackie Robinson, the Brooklyn Dodgers made Johnny Wright the second black player in so-called organized baseball. Wright was Jackie's teammates with the Montreal Royals at the start of the 1946 season. After 1 year as a Dodger farmhand, Johnny Wright returned to the Negro Leagues, but his contribution to the reintegration of baseball shouldn't be overlooked. In late September 1943, submarine pitcher Porter Moss of the Memphis Red Sox no-hit the Cincinnati Clowns at Russwood Park in Memphis. I believe this clipping here is the complete documentation we have of the event. 13 days later, Moss threw another no-hitter at Russwood, this time against the New York Black Yankees. These 2 no-hitters aren't on the list at no-hitters.com, but are included at RetroSheet. Presumably, they make Porter Moss the only man to throw 2 big league level no-hitters in the same season, and he did it just 2 weeks apart. 9 months later, Porter Moss was dead. He was shot by a drunken passenger on a train in Tennessee. A white doctor on the train refused to treat Moss because of his race. By the time he was taken to the hospital, it was too late to save him. The only perfect game thrown in top-level blackball was authored by Homestead Grays Hall of Famer Ray Brown in 1945 at Washington's Griffith Stadium against Chicago. This was the second game of a doubleheader and was called after 7 innings. So technically, it is not an official no-hitter, not an official perfect game. But that afternoon, Ray Brown was as perfect as any Negro League pitcher ever was. From the Pittsburgh Courier, quote, "So smooth was Brown's achievement, the fans did not realize its magnitude." This is probably my favorite blackball no-hitter. It was thrown by Hall of Famer Leon Day of the Newark Eagles on opening day 1946, the first baseball played after the end of World War II. Leon Day was returning from 2 years in the Army, where he helped land supplies on Utah Beach and Normandy on D-Day +6. Opening day, of course, is overloaded with connotations of rebirth and making a fresh start. In 1946, with the war finally over, those feelings were amplified greatly. If somebody wrote a movie script that featured an Army vet kicking off that season with a no-hitter, it would be rejected as too corny to be credible. But Leon Day made that story a reality. 1948 is the last season the Negro Leagues played at a major league level, and the last top-level blackball no-hitter was a combined effort of two New York Black Yankees against Newark and Rochester, New York, the Black Yanks' second home that season. Teenager Albert Stevens started the game for New York, and though he didn't allow a hit, he was pulled in the sixth after walking the first two batters that inning. Next Stanley, who no-hit the Eagles 12 years earlier, came in from the bullpen to finish the combined gem. The next time a black pitcher would throw a no-hitter in top-level competition would be May of 1955, when Toothpick Sam Jones of the Cubs no-hit the Pittsburgh Pirates at Wrigley Field. As the headline states, Jones's was the first thrown in the majors by a Negro hurler, but it was just the latest in a long legacy of big league level black no-hitters. Among my sources for this presentation, no-hitters and Retro Sheet provided the roadmap. Stats and a lot of the player portraits came from Seam Heads, used agate type, the Saber Bio project. The Los Angeles Sentinel online has a wonderful article about Doc Sykes, and all of the clippings came from newspapers.com. And of course, the usual suspects, James Riley's biographical encyclopedia, Clark and Lester's Negro Leagues book, and Dixon and Hannigan's photographic history. These three books are always nearby when I'm working on these things. I'd like to thank our collaborators, Community Cup Classic Foundation, Lifeline Sports, P5, the Partnership, and yours truly. And a special thanks to our most valuable partner, Cuyahoga Arts and Culture. And I invite you all to return every month as we continue the Negro League Soul schedule of investigations into Black baseball history.